All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're not just swapping spooky campfire tales. We're actually going to clinically break down the anatomy of an urban legend. Think of this as a highly structured case study of a truly terrifying, frankly impossible encounter that happened on an empty Oklahoma road back in November 2019. So grab your notebooks, because we are going to analyze every single chilling detail of this entire event.
To set our baseline here, I want you to ask yourself a super simple question. Would you unlock your car doors for a total stranger on an empty highway at 2 a.m.? I mean, seriously, put yourself in the driver's seat for a second. You're cruising through rural Oklahoma. It is absolutely pouring rain. There are no gas stations, no other cars, just miles and miles of pitch-black highway. It's a grounded, totally relatable scenario, right? Most of us know that late-night driving fatigue. But what exactly happens when everyday human empathy collides with something, well, entirely inhuman?
Okay, let's dive into this. When a normal person breaks down on the side of the road, there are some pretty obvious signs, right? You've got a vehicle with its hazard lights on, maybe some luggage, and they usually look visibly relieved when you pull over. But the figure standing on the side of this road? Zero of those things. No car, no bike, just standing there completely unnervingly motionless. And the biggest red flag of them all? This unnaturally wide smile. We're not talking about a sigh of relief here. It was just this wide, fixed, unnatural grin. Analytically speaking, our driver completely ignored some massive environmental warning signs before their foot ever even hit the brakes.
So the driver rolls down the window and asks if the guy is okay. The figure just nods super slowly and asks, "Can you take me home?" Now, according to the source material, his voice sounded weirdly dry, almost unused, like it literally hadn't spoken a word in years. But here is the truly chilling mechanical detail of this whole interaction. Before the driver could even process the request or say yes, the man just opened the back door and got right in. And the driver explicitly noted that they never heard the car doors actually unlock. So the physical boundaries of the vehicle were breached before anyone even gave consent. Once this thing is inside, the whole environment just immediately shifts. We see a massive, rapid escalation of sensory anomalies. First off, the smell. It wasn't just rainwater. The enclosed cabin was suddenly filled with the intense, undeniable stench of wet graveyard dirt. Next, the tech starts failing. The driver tries to punch the passenger's address into the GPS, but it can't find it. The passenger just smiles and says, "You know the way." And then comes the auditory intrusion. Out of nowhere, the car radio completely explodes with harsh, aggressive static, followed almost instantly by these overlapping soft whispers. And cutting right through all that static and those overlapping voices, one incredibly clear, totally impossible sentence comes through the speakers: "Don't stop the car." I mean, just imagine the sheer, unadulterated panic setting in right there. Your own car radio is literally warning you about the passenger sitting directly behind you. The driver violently rips the radio off, which just leaves this dead, heavy silence in the car. At this point, the isolation is absolutely complete.
And this brilliantly illustrates the physical encroachment of this passenger. Let's map it out. Step 1, he starts off sitting perfectly upright in the back seat, keeping his distance. Step 2, just a few minutes later, the driver quickly checks the rearview mirror, and somehow the passenger's knees are practically touching the back of the driver's seat. Step 3, eventually his face appears directly beside the driver in the mirror, and the most terrifying part of this reality, the driver never actually saw him move. Not once. The entity literally only advanced when the driver's eyes were turned away. It's like a real-life game of red light, green light, but with life or death stakes.
Let's track the timeline of how this trap actually closes, because it happens at a terrifying speed. Exactly 10 minutes into the drive, the GPS suddenly reroutes completely on its own to an unmarked dirt road. 11 minutes in, the driver desperately grabs their cell phone to dial 911. Zero signal, and the screen just goes dead black. 12 minutes in, every single door in the car locks simultaneously. Click, click, click. Within a matter of minutes, the driver has rapidly, systematically lost absolutely all control of the vehicle and their reality. The driver obviously protests, stating firmly that they are staying on the main highway, and the passenger, still wearing that exact same grin, says this: "You used to hide under your bed during thunderstorms." Just let that sink in for a second. This is a massive psychological jump scare that completely shatters the mundane reality of this drive. The physical threat of being trapped in a car is terrifying enough, but this is a direct, calculated invasion of the mind. Let's look at the specific data points of this impossible knowledge. The entity explicitly tells the driver, "You were 7 years old. You had a blue blanket. You had glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to your ceiling."
Guys, this is pure psychological manipulation at its finest. The entity is actively weaponizing private, deeply hidden childhood memories, specific details that absolutely no random stranger on a dark highway could possibly know. It is highly disorienting, and it serves one distinct purpose: to completely break down the driver's mental defenses.
The driver slams on the brakes in an absolute panic and yells, "How do you know that?" And the entity just whispers back, "She still cries for you sometimes." Keep in mind, the driver's mother had passed away when they were just 11 years old. This is a devastating, surgical, emotional blow. And right after delivering it, the passenger lets out this soft, choking laugh. It wasn't loud, it wasn't manic. The source actually describes it as sounding like he was trying to remember how humans are supposed to sound. Right at this moment, the entire physical environment shifts completely. Think about Highway 44. It's a paved, modern road with a clear route even in heavy rain. But instantly, it shifts to what we call the trap. The highway literally disappears. The driver hasn't touched the steering wheel, hasn't taken an exit, yet suddenly they are driving down this narrow, dead dirt forest road surrounded by dying trees with zero way out. The physical impossibility of this is just staggering. I mean, imagine the absolute suffocating panic of the solid concrete road beneath your tires simply vanishing into thin air.
Now, what's really fascinating about this next phase is that the trap is fully sprung. The car engine dies completely. The headlights violently flicker out, plunging the entire cabin into pitch darkness. The driver looks over into the mirror and finally sees the entity's true form sitting right beside them. Its skin has turned this pale gray, wax-like texture, and the eyes, completely solidly black. No whites, no pupils, just empty void. Whatever mimicry of humanity it was wearing has dropped entirely. Sitting in that pitch-black car, just listening to the heavy rain hit the metal roof, the entity leans in and whispers one final sentence: "You stopped for me." The driver is frozen completely solid. They literally can't even breathe. They can feel the passenger right behind them, practically touching their skin. And then, right there in the darkness, they feel these long, ice-cold fingers slowly brush against the back of their neck. The driver lets out a scream, whips around to face it, but the back seat is completely empty. The rear door is just standing wide open with the rain pouring inside. And as we analyze the physical evidence left behind at the scene, we see a trail of muddy footprints leading straight away into the dense woods. But the driver specifically noted that these weren't human footprints. They were strangely elongated, horribly distorted. It was almost like something was trying and severely failing to mimic the way a human walks. Let's move along and see how this builds out our case study. Because when we look at the Highway 44 police records, it turns out this was not an isolated incident. Not even close. We actually have a very clear target profile here. Lone drivers. A strict time frame. It always happens after 2 a.m. And the entity's behavior? It's perfectly consistent. It's always smiling, and it always gets closer the second the driver looks away. Victim outcomes range from severe shock, like being found wandering the woods for days, to complete unsolved disappearances. This takes a singular nightmare and transforms it into a highly documented 20-year phenomenon. So, the driver is eventually found about 30 miles away at a random gas station. When they recount this whole crazy story to the responding police officer, the cop looks visibly uncomfortable. And then he asks a very specific, very telling question. Did he ask you for a ride, or did he get in before you answered? Guys, this is a massive structural clue. That officer already knew exactly how the entity operated before the driver even explained the weird door mechanics. The local police are clearly acutely aware of this pattern.
The driver naturally asks if they ever managed to identify the smiling man. The officer just shakes his head, revealing that they had once checked all the old regional birth and death records, and he tells the driver flat out, there was never a person matching that description. Boom. Here is our final, horrifying confirmation. Through decades of data and countless missing persons reports, there is absolutely zero historical record of a human being that matches this passenger. Whatever this thing is, it was never human to begin with.
The lasting aftermath on our subject is, as you'd expect, extremely severe. They quit driving entirely, they packed up, moved to a completely different state, and got rid of their car just to try and forget the whole ordeal. But that kind of psychological trauma, it's permanent. They still wake up in a dead panic whenever it rains, and occasionally, actually scratch that, frequently, they look out the window of their new third-floor apartment and see a tall, motionless, smiling figure waiting right under a streetlight. This case study shows us that the entity didn't just vanish into the woods. It adapts. It tracks you. It's still out there, just waiting patiently for someone kind enough to stop.
Which brings us to our final big takeaway for this explainer. When you're making that brutal late-night commute, You're exhausted, the radio is low, and you're relying entirely on your headlights to pierce through the heavy rain. Who exactly is waiting on the dark roads you drive at night? Really think about that the next time you see someone standing perfectly still in the dark. Thanks for joining me today. Stay safe out there and, for sure, keep your doors locked.